Some decades after the Battle of Yavin, the unknown regions would fall under the reign of a Scourge, a warlord from the planet Nagai. This Scourge would attract the attention of the Sith Lord Darth Krayt, the former Jedi Knight Ashrad Het, and future usurper of Rohan Fel's imperial throne. He offered the Scourge a place among his enforcers, as a chance for power. Taking up the offer, the Scourge became known as Darth Nihl. Nihl would climb the ranks of the One Sith Order quickly, and eventually became designated as Krayt's Hand, his highest-ranking military enforcer. Due to his outside heritage, Nihl would forge certain rivalries amongst the ranks. He would go on to lead the attack on Ossus, exterminating several Jedi and even the Grandmaster Cole Skywalker. Years later, after the supposed death and rebirth of Krayt, Nihl aided his master during the raid against the Sith Temple on Coruscant, in which Krayt achieved vengeance against the treacherous Warlock. Later, however, Darth Krayt met his end at the hands of the young Cade Skywalker. In consequence, Nihl took up control of the Order, and led the Sith back into hiding, hoping to preserve it long enough to complete his former master's vision for the galaxy. While the title of Battle Master could only be held by a single instructor, the Jedi still had many great lightsaber instructors. One of these instructors was the Jedi Master Sora Bulq. A renowned lightsaber instructor and warrior, Sora Bulq aided fellow Jedi Master Mace Windu in the creation of Vaapad, a variation on the 7th form of lightsaber combat. Bulq would follow his fellow Jedi to Geonosis to rescue the Jedi Knight Obi-Wan Kenobi at the start of the Clone Wars. Teaming up with the Jedi Spy Master Thulm in an attempt to arrest Count Dooku, now the Sith Lord Darth Tyrannus. Afterwards, Thulm was left for dead and Sora was captured by Dooku, in a hope that he could turn Bulq to his side by playing on his remorse at the loss of so many Jedi, along with his secret fascination with the dark side of the Force. Ultimately, Dooku succeeded and Bulq became one of his top enforcers and bodyguards. He would participate in events such as an attempt to kickstart a schism within the Jedi Order by framing Mace Windu for the murder of multiple Jedi. He personally assassinated the Jedi Master Oberyn Sissis, and he himself was ultimately killed during the Siege of Seleucami by Quinlan Vos. Sora Bulq was remembered as an example of just how far war and the dark side could corrupt such a once great Jedi.
Round 1.
A male Nagi of an undetermined age, Darth Nihl appeared to be within his physical prime. Generally speaking, the Nagai race were distinguished by their slender frame and pale complexion. However, beyond that they possess no physical traits beyond the typical human. In Nihl's case, he is an example of well-rounded competency. He has fended off attacks of opponents with excellent strength, along with employing some impressive use of acrobatics, demonstrating considerable aptitude in his speed and agility. And he has even made excellent use of his manual dexterity, a pivotal trait required for the execution of his personal fighting style. Nihl's endurance, durability, and personal perseverance were very noteworthy. He's engaged in rather lengthy battlefield engagements with no sign of tiring, and has continued fighting after being pummeled by physical strikes, also with little sign of hindrance. He has even been witnessed being kicked in the face and down a steep hill, and appeared to be rather unharmed afterwards. Furthermore, Nihl has been known to experience firsthand the effects of the Embrace of Pain, a Yu Zhongvong biotorture device. He would also wear blaster-proof armor for extra protection from attacks. In addition, after a failed duel with an enraged Cade Skywalker, Nihl lost his right arm at the elbow, which was replaced by a Vong-grown limb. This limb provided no advantage or hindrance to his physical output, but likely added a certain level of durability. All in all, Darth Nihl was one of the most physically able Sith of his day, and his well-rounded physicality will serve him well against a wide variety of opponents. A Weequay male of an unknown age, Sora Bulq appeared to remain within his physical prime, a trait that was pushed to the limit through his constant refinement of his martial arts skills. The Weequay race were attributed with incredibly tough skin, akin to that of a tough hide. Weequay's skin was capable of withstanding some blaster wounds and conventional knife attacks. While he has been overcome rather easily by force attacks in the past, I instead see this as a testament to the power of the likes of Mace Windu and Count Dooku, as opposed to any lacking in personal perseverance on Bulq's own part. Sora's physical output was incredible, unleashing speed enough to keep pace with Mace Windu, and able to drive back the exceptionally strong and hardy Quinlan Vos, often employing power blows into his overall offensive. His endurance was also impressive, having engaged in lengthy lightsaber duels and even consecutive fights with no sign of tiring. All these traits were bolstered by Sora's ability to draw on his rage and fanatical hatred to boost his physical ability even further. In conclusion, Sora Bulq possesses formidable physical characteristics that allow him to go toe-to-toe with almost anybody. While Darth Nihl is indeed capable of contending with opponents of greater physicality, he ultimately relies on using his impressive physique as a response to his opposition's superior capabilities. Sora Bulq, on the other hand, relies on a more direct approach, bringing the fight to the enemy with an overwhelming rage-driven offensive. In such a contest, Nihl is going to have his work cut out for him. In his defense, he has displayed hardiness enough to continue a fight whilst being pummeled under an opponent's assault. But as seen in his encounters with Cade Skywalker, he can only hold his opposition at bay for so long. Ultimately, it is Sora's unrelenting rage-driven offensive that affords him the advantage in this category. Sora Bulq gets the physical edge.
Round 2.
Darth Nihl was considered to be Darth Krayt's most accomplished military enforcer. In accordance with his unusual weapon, the light pike, Nihl created his own unique fighting style to accommodate his chosen weapon. Using his weapon's lengthened hilt, Nihl would often attempt to keep his opponent at a distance and off-balance them with linear thrusts, employing horizontal slashes that could force opponents to break off. His defensive approach had him relying on his manual dexterity and use of acrobatics to evade an enemy's assault, should it become too much for him to bat off. However, this does not mean that he can't put up a defense, as he can and has done so against Cade Skywalker in both their encounters. Furthermore, should the distance be closed and if Nihl were to find himself too close to his foe, he would employ the incorporated use of unarmed strikes to off-balance or stagger his opponents and buy himself a moment to regain his own composure. Nihl further extenuates this by way of his tactical ingenuity, often allowing opponents to get too comfortable as he ropes them into his desired position, and then he proceeds with a forward-mounted linear thrust to incapacitate them, which he achieved to great effect against Wolf Sazon. In conclusion, Darth Nihl is a rather noteworthy lightsaber duelist, having proven himself as a worthy adversary, and his unusual combat style will give even the most experienced of warriors a worthy challenge. Sora Bulq was considered to be one of the greatest lightsaber instructors and one of the most accomplished swordsmen that the Jedi Order has ever known, perfecting the various forms of lightsaber combat, classical and experimental alike. As a result, we can infer that Bulq was a master of all 7 traditional lightsaber forms. However, like any other, Sora had his preferences. In his case, this would be Vaapad, a variation on the 7th form of lightsaber combat, which he, along with Mace Windu, created. Traditional Form 7 is the most aggressive form of lightsaber combat, focusing on bold and direct, yet randomized and unpredictable swordplay. Form 7 is the most demanding form, in both a physical and mental sense. However, the physical strain is next to nothing compared to the mental requirements, as it requires its practitioners to give into its destructive fury and become swept up in the thrill of battle. Vaapad was designed to answer Yuyo's weakness of counterattack, and was intended to allow the user to create a superconducting loop of energy between the user and their opponent, allowing them to feed off the enemy's dark aggression. However, Vaapad was designed to be a state of mind, in which the user must never actually leave the light, instead of going over to the dark, something a true Vaapad master was capable of accomplishing. However, this concept was something Bulq failed to grasp, and Mace even went so far as to state that Sora had been mastered by Vaapad itself. In a sense, Sora's application of Vaapad was a regression back to Yuyo, as he failed to achieve this state of mind, hence his fall to the dark side. In consequence, Sora is susceptible to an opponent's counter-offensive. To be fair, however, this doesn't mean that he can't operate effectively in a defensive role, as he can and has. as he did against Mace Windu and Thawne. But it's just not something that he typically employed, as former Master Bulq is driven by sadistic bloodlust, as seen in his final engagement with Thawne, in which his overconfidence led him to drawing out the fight. In addition, Sora was a master of classical Jarkai dual blade fencing, likely a holdover from Ataru and Naiman. However, Sora was by no means over-specialized and has been known to employ the use of a single saber when necessary. Alongside this, he further accentuates his offensive capabilities by integrating physical strikes and force pushes into his lightsaber sequences. Overall, Sora Bulq is one of the most deadly lightsaber duelists to date, having proven himself viable against a multitude of well-respected lightsaber duelists, such as the Jedi Spy Master Thawne, Quinlan Vos, and even going so far to hold his own against Mace Windu for an incredibly lengthy period of time. This is a rather interesting section to call. Sora Bulq definitely possesses the superior skill overall. However, considering that he often falls into his rage-fueled offensives, he is often blinded by rage and ultimately negates his aptitude for strategic thinking. Something that Nihl prides himself on using, as he too tends to couple his unorthodox fighting style with his tactical ingenuity to outwit his opponents. Given the unrelenting assault of Sora Bulq and unpredictable offensive, along with his more assertive aptitude for chaining physical and force-based attacks into his overall offensive, this will make it exceedingly difficult for Nihl to adjust his technique to suit the situation. Add this to Sora's greater accomplishments as a duelist, such as holding an edge over Thawne and Quinlan Vos, along with holding his own against Mace Windu for a rather lengthy period of time, and the decision should be easy enough to make. Sora Bulq gets the edge as a martial artist and lightsaber duelist.
Round 3.
Darth Nihl was one of Krayt's most powerful servants, coupling a multitude of force abilities with devastating raw power. His use of physical augmentation was proficient, allowing him to use the superhuman levels of speed, strength and agility for which the Jedi and Sith were famed. He's also demonstrated an extremely acute force sense, able to detect his rival Darth Talon within the Sith tombs of Korriban, something that even the legendary Jedi Master Wolf Sazon was incapable of achieving. Nihl didn't openly abuse his combative powers. However, given his tactical ingenuity, it is likely that he simply didn't view it as necessary. When he has used his powers, however, their effects have been rather devastating. He's casually employed basic force pushes to off-balance non-force sensitive enemies, and has used a force choke to completely break through the force barrier of Cade Skywalker himself. Granted, Cade did have his attention on Darth Talon at the time, yet it is still extremely worthy of note, especially since he was able to put so much strain on Cade that he caused him to bleed through his nose and eyes, and Cade was lucky to pass out when he did, otherwise he would have likely died. In addition, Nihl has demonstrated excellent magnitude with Force Lightning, having killed Cold Skywalker with a single blast. This is also worthy of note, because not only was it a single burst of lightning, but Cole had also not been injured before being struck by it, so the fact that Nihl can employ such devastating bursts of power is a true testament to his strength in the Force, and it is something that shouldn't be underestimated by anyone. As a dedicated martial artist, Sora Bulq was not overly committed to the studies of the Force, yet despite this, he was regarded as exceptionally powerful, his power even being acknowledged by the likes of Jedi Grandmaster Yoda. However, while his power was indeed excellent, his use of it was straightforward and blunt, yet still quite effective. His most commonly used power was physical augmentation, which he almost always bolsters through use of Dark Rage to boost his combative prowess, turning him into a bloodthirsty animal. He has demonstrated a faculty for cloaking his Force signature and moving around undetected by opposing Force wielders, using this ability to sneak up on Oppo Rancisis. Yet despite this, he still opted to use a group of Anzati Masters to distract Oppo, suggesting that Bulq could still be potentially located by top-tier Force wielders. Bulq's combative applications of telekinesis were simplistic. He has chained basic force pushes into his overall offensive rather consistently. His effectiveness at doing so was in fact noticeable, since he managed to ragdoll Quinlan Vos multiple times and even stagger Mace Windu, an impressive demonstration considering the power that Windu himself wields. While he has been overcome by use of the Force rather easily in the past, I personally don't see this as an indication of Bulq being weak against this form of attack. Instead, I see this as an example of the power wielded by those who overcame him, i.e. Mace Windu and Count Dooku. Plus, it doesn't help that Bulq followed the typical connotations of his chosen lightsaber style, which left him susceptible to counterattacks in general, as a Form 7 practitioner tends to bolster their offense at the expense of everything else, diverting all their power to the use of physical augmentation. In consequence, Sora Bulq, to me, is best described as Anakin Skywalker Light. Both use their powers in simplistic, straightforward manners, but their inherent magnitude makes up for any lack of subtlety, and the effectiveness achieved possesses a great threat to the refined masters of the Force. In a sense, Sora Bulq has demonstrated a more abusive use of his powers. However, Nihl has shown physical hardiness enough to show that he should be able to cope with being knocked around. Plus, thanks to his tactical ingenuity, Nihl would more than likely recognize the more appreciable opportunity for such use of his powers. In addition, Nihl's magnitude has proven potent enough to dish out some serious damage against Force users of a similar caliber to the majority of ones that Bulq has overthrown or staggered. Darth Nihl gets the edge as a Force wielder.
Round 4.
Darth Nihl wielded a long-handled lightsaber, also known as the Light Pike. The weapon featured a standard blade length and a hilt roughly a meter in length. This handle provided extra leverage and could be used to pressure an opponent at a distance. However, the weapon was somewhat cumbersome and could be difficult to wield in close quarters. However, this could be partially negated should Nihl place his hand upon the upper end of his weapon. Lastly, the hilt was encased in Yorick coral, like all lightsabers of the One Sith Order, which provided a slight level of resistance against lightsabers, though not complete immunity against it. It also housed a single red synthetic crystal as the focusing lens, providing greater cutting power. Ultimately, Nil's long-handled weapon may have certain limitations, but his ability to effectively wield the weapon and its unorthodox nature made for a perfectly viable tool in combat. Sora Bulq wielded the standard armament of a typical Jarkai specialist, a standard lightsaber and a Shoto. Both were built to a simple and standard design, the lightsaber providing no real advantages beyond any other conventional weapon. The Shoto, however, had a number of benefits. It was easier to handle and as such was typically wielded in the wielder's offhand in close quarters combat. Both weapons originally used a single blue Adagan crystal as their focusing lenses, but were later replaced with red synthetics, trading a portion of maneuverability for extra cutting power. This category is rather simple to call. While Nil's weapon is indeed an unorthodox weapon in its own right and does provide a significant reach advantage, this will be difficult to take advantage of against such a fanatical opponent such as Sora Bulq, who prides himself on heavily pressuring his opposition in close quarters. While Nihl is skilled enough to negate this weapon's disadvantages to a degree, Bulq's weapons provide no such disadvantage, and the added mobility provided by the Shoto, along with the ability to switch back and forth between two different variations of saber for use as your primary weapon, simply add to the options of being able to choose between wielding one or two weapons. Sora Bulq gets the edge in weaponry.
Final round.
In a fight between Darth Nihl and Sora Bulq, I would say that the advantage to the victor goes 6-10, but each time the victor comes out battered and broken. When the confrontation begins, Sora would fall into his sadistic bloodlust after sensing the power of Nihl. Wanting the satisfaction of killing such a powerful adversary, he unleashes his trademark Vapad offensive, slipping into the dark side, drawing on his rage to boost himself. Nihl is initially overtaken by Bulq's unrelenting assault, and in some instances, Bulq stands a solid chance of overpowering Nihl with such a frenzy, before Nihl is able to retaliate. However, given Nihl's already proven ability to hold off unrelenting assaults, he would fall into a retreat and attempt to give himself room to maneuver. Bulq unleashes a telekinetic shove and hurls Nihl through the air. He leaps towards his enemy. Nihl quickly rolls away and makes use of a backhanded punch in an attempt to stun Sora. Bulq angrily shrugs off the attack and immediately responds with a pommel strike. Nihl uses the momentum from the hit to propel himself into a full body spin, forcing Bulq to break off. But rather than take a moment to rethink his strategy, Bulq throws himself at Nihl once again, giving in to his battle lust, becoming incredibly frustrated. However, by this point, Nihl had used the previous opening to give himself the room he needed, and unleashes a horizontal slash in the midst of a sidestep, striking Sora across the shoulder, causing him to lose his composure. As he attempts to pick himself up, he is struck in the back by a torrent of lightning. The blue bolts crackle and course throughout his organs, causing him to drop to his knees. Without giving his enemy time to recover, Nihl stabs Bulq through the back. As he withdraws his saber, Sora falls to the floor, dead. And thus I declare Darth Nihl, Darth Krayt's hand, the winner. Well, ladies and gents, thank you as always for watching this matchup, and as usual I hope you all enjoyed, even if you don't agree with the verdict. Anyway, feel free to leave your thoughts and comments below, and I shall see you all in another video in the near future. Goodbye, and may the Force be with you.